The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right, Q4 has been a wild ride for crypto. Sam Bankman-Fried was tried and convicted of 7 charges related to fraud, all while institutional interest continues to heat up the crypto markets. Joining us now to unpack some of the latest events shaping the industry is the Cryptopians author and Unchained podcast host, Laura Shin. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Always a pleasure having you on. Now, you were in court when Sam Bankman-Fried was found guilty. We were following your tweets very intently over here. Talk to us about anything that surprised you during the trial.
Wow. I mean, there were a number of things. I think there were a few things around, just exactly when it was that the fraud started. And I think there were different times when people thought that it might have kind of happened due to the downturn that got kicked off with the collapse of Terra Luna in May of 2022. And the government really brought evidence that a lot of this was happening before. Some of the notable incidents that occurred were, for instance, showing that Alameda had special privileges that were coded in as early as a few months after FTX launched in July of 2019, meaning they were coded in then after the launch in the spring, like April. And then on top of that, that customer money was used in, I guess it would have been the summer of 2021 when FTX went to buy out Binance's stake in the exchange. And then on top of that in late 2021, Sam Bankman-Fried was considering making more investments in venture capital and asked Caroline Ellison to come up with scenarios of what would happen if they did that, plus there was a downturn. And so, she again projected if we were to do this, then there would be 100% chance that we cannot pay people back. So point is that even before the events of 2022, when we saw multiple collapses in crypto, we did see that Sam Bankman-Fried was willing to use customer money, and not only willing to, but frequently did.
Laura, you've been covering this space for a long time, I think almost a decade. How are you seeing the industry change in the wake of Sam's conviction?
What I've seen, and I frankly saw this pretty early on, is that people were just doubling down on decentralization. They were realizing that, I'm sure you know that in the crypto industry, the ideal that's often been held up is around building decentralized applications, decentralized money, whatever it might be. And Sam Bankman-Fried's empire was really built around centralized companies and entities. And even before the collapse of FTX, we did see that in a way, the crypto community turned against Sam once they realized that some legislation that he was championing in Congress would benefit centralized actors over what many people in the crypto community, felt they were really aiming for, which was a more decentralized world and more products and services that could be offered to people in a decentralized manner. And so I feel that, like I said, pretty much immediately after the collapse, I was hearing from more entrepreneurs that they really learned their lesson. And it is true that obviously in order to get this industry off the ground, there has been this period of centralized actors that have been necessary. Coinbase is probably a prime example where they really built that on-ramp from the traditional financial system to the crypto world, which, at least aims to be decentralized. I don't know if it's always achieved that yet. But the point is that, many people see that as, what's necessary to kind of bring people over into the crypto economy, but that's not the direction people are headed. And so, we've just seen kind of a doubling down of, more ways to make sure that different parts of the crypto ecosystem are not vulnerable to single points of failure, more interest in things like proof of reserves or in letting users of crypto exchanges retain hold of their keys. There's just numerous, ways where I see that, if people are going to be using their own hardware wallets, to make sure that they're not vulnerable to themselves losing their own keys, things like that. So I have a feeling that in a way, this will end up being sort of a pivotal point where the crypto community kind of came back to its ideals after having, engaged with centralization decentralization in a way, but now they're really setting their sights on that decentralized world.
I mean, it might have these ideals, but at the same time, inevitably, things tend to move towards monopolization unless there is some sort of barrier to monopoly, right? I mean, we saw this in the 1800s in the United States, where you had conglomerates and large monopolies taking over things. And ultimately, it required the force of the government to break them up and unwillingly, and they're still involved in that. Yet people like me are all for free markets, and we could go on and on about how great they are. Isn't that inevitable, regardless, in something that might seem decentralized, but at the end of the day, it's going to, for it to get anywhere, or as it gets used, it'll find itself constantly centralized ad infinitum.
So I understand what your point is, but I would just reframe it a little bit, where I would say that once there's certain decentralized services that get codified or get used more widely, that we might see it narrow, where there are certain ones that are used more widely than others. But as long as they're built in a way where they truly are decentralized, then I think we would see that they are just applications that are available. They're not controlled by any single entity, or if they are controlled by a DAO, or decentralized autonomous organization, a group of people that owns tokens that gives them voting rights over control of some protocol, then it could be the case where it's not maybe. So for instance, like a decentralized exchange, maybe there's kind of 2 to 3 dominant ones. But it could perhaps be that they're not controlled by centralized actors, but more like these, decentralized or distributed communities.
By the way, I'm using my Celsius Hodl coffee mug today.
Great. It's good to see that some part of Celsius is still in use today.
Yeah.
Laura, quickly before we go, we got to get your comments on the spot Bitcoin ETF race. ARK Invest CEO Cathie Wood, said on CNBC that it's hard to come up with a logical reason for why SEC Chair Gary Gensler is standing in the way of a spot ETF. You wrote an op-ed for CoinDesk recently talking about FTX and ETFs. What do you make of her comments, and do you think we're going to see an approval by the end of this year or by early next year?
I would attribute these comments not even directly to Cathie Wood. I know she's the one who said them yesterday, but if you look at that decision about converting the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust over to an ETF, the 3 judges in that, they basically said that they could not see any logical reason why the SEC would have denied that. And they called out, what the crypto community has been calling out for a long time, which is that the Bitcoin futures ETFs had been approved, and the price of those Bitcoin futures tracks the price of spot Bitcoin 99%. So there really isn't a difference. And so the notion that the SEC would deny the spot Bitcoin ETF because of potential manipulation in the markets, it was like, okay, if you are approving the futures ETF, which is based on the same price, then why wouldn't it be the same concern? So, hence, since you did approve the one, then that would mean that you should also approve the other. And so I think that this notion that there was not a logical reason to deny has been, like I said, alive in the crypto community for a long time. The judges reinforced that. And then Cathie, she's the latest one to just call that out, that the logic behind denying that just wasn't really there. And so she went on to surmise that Gary Gensler has political ambitions. I can't claim to be enough of a DC insider to know whether that's true or, to what purpose that would be for. However, given the fact that there isn't a logical, rational reason to have done that, then it does make sense that there would be some extraneous reason that is not relevant to Bitcoin itself, why the SEC and Gensler himself would be against approving a spot Bitcoin ETF.
All right, Laura, we are all out of time. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Always a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Same here.
That was the Cryptopians author and Unchained podcast host, Laura Shin.